to Lance Corporal Jordan.
You've been watching Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. He is honoring U.S. service members for their bravery during the attack on Abbey Gate in Afghanistan. And we turn now to the horrific flooding that hit the border of Nepal and China. Look at this video. It doesn't even look real, does it? And now the death toll is rapidly climbing, with more than 150 people reported dead and 47 Americans missing. We're going to have more on that catastrophic event in just a moment. And will Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz run for president in the 2028 presidential election? Today, I asked him that very question. Find out his answer later this hour. And tributes for Dolly Parton are pouring in from all over the world following her death, even Britain's royal family honoring the Queen of Country. That later in the show. I'm Greta Van Susteren. This is The Record. I want to warn you, the video I'm about to show you is difficult to watch. Earlier today, catastrophic flash flooding slammed the border between Nepal and China. That death toll is rising, but right now around 100 people are confirmed dead, plus hundreds of tourists are missing. According to Nepal's tourism board, at least 341 foreign nationals have already been reported missing, and that number does include 47 Americans. According to officials, the flooding is believed to have been caused by a wall of mud and rock that collapsed into a river on the Himalayan border between Nepal and China. 7 minutes before water breached Nepal-China border, German Research Center for Geosciences recorded a 4.4 magnitude earthquake. Samaritan's Purse Deputy Director of International Projects, David Phillips, joins me. Nice to talk to you, David. Obviously, this just happened, but naturally, everyone's got to think about how to respond, and you don't even know what you're responding to at this point. But Samaritan's Purse has responded to some of these disasters around the world. Can you tell me sort of, the complications and challenges for something like this?
Yeah, thank you, Greta. It's great to talk to you today. And we're looking at this situation as well. It's obviously, as you said, it's a catastrophic situation with so many families that have been affected. And Samaritan's Purse has worked all over the world, including in Nepal in 2015 after the earthquake that struck that country. And we know what it's like when these families have been impacted by such a catastrophic situation. So when we look at this, we know that right now the emergency responders are trying to rescue people. There's people going to be trapped. And there's a lot of needs at this time that families have when something like this strikes their community.
What about the State Department and these foreign governments? Because it's one thing if it happens here in the United States. I mean, we don't have sort of the international issues. But you can't just go someplace and show up. I mean, what do you have to do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because as you noted, like, we're dealing with multiple countries. There's the issue of access, even geographically. So Nepal is a mountainous country. You're talking about the northern part of the country, which is the most mountainous. It's hard to get there. Sometimes that affects how quickly you can get there to do an assessment. But we're also then talking about how quickly you can get supplies into those communities. So if people are cut off, immediately they're going to need some type of an emergency medical response. Injuries will have happened and people need to get medical care. But you also have to think about the clean water programming that is going to be needed, because a flood of this magnitude will cause all kinds of destruction, including to the water infrastructure. So people need medicine, they need water, and certainly they're going to need shelter. And all of those things are tied back to your question, which is how do you get there as quick as you can to save lives and alleviate suffering?
And of course, as we're looking at this, we see roads are being washed away. And I've been on enough trips with Samaritan's Purse to see that if it's a small airport and everyone tries to fly planes in to evacuate people who bring supplies, and there isn't room on the tarmac for planes, and if you've got a response from multiple countries and multiple organizations, that's even can be an organizational nightmare. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of coordination needed. This is one of the reasons Samaritan's Purse, when we go into a place, we're coordinating with the local authorities. It's very important for us to understand what they're seeing, even down to the local level. This is why we always work through the local churches. They're in these communities. They know the needs that exist on the ground. And the thing that we've also observed after working all over the world in places of crisis is that in these times of disasters, people need hope. And that's why we try to work with the local church, because we want people to know God loves them, even through the midst of a disaster like this. But those local communities and the people that live there, the governments that are around them, and the other stakeholders that are trying to respond, it's important for all those groups to coordinate together so that the response can be as effective as possible. And how great it is, you know, as you know, I'm a big fan of Samaritan's Purse. It's like a fine oiled piece of machinery, because nobody knows how to respond, and no one knows how to do the assessment, how to respond, how to get the supplies there, how to connect. I mean, you name it. Regrettably, you've done the drill so many times that you know how to do this. Yeah, we have worked all over the world, and as I mentioned there, even in Nepal after that 2015 earthquake, and being able to go work in these remote communities, helping rebuild homes that were destroyed. But really for us, what we want to do is we want to try to get there quick and to save lives and alleviate suffering. And yeah, when we look at Nepal right now, as we talk to our partners on the ground and try to understand what role Samaritan's Purse might have in responding there, it also, as you said, it brings us back to all the experiences we've had all over the world responding to crisis in Jesus' name. David Phillips of Samaritan's Purse, thank you very much. Nice to see you, David. Thank you, Greta. Coming up, I asked Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz if he has plans to run in the 2028 presidential election. His answer when the record continues.
This was America in 1980, held in contempt by foreign nations. Across the world, people were losing their freedoms. So many countries thought America had seen its day, but we knew better. So we stopped complaining together and started working together. Today, America is strong again. We're looking to the future with confidence and pride. America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that, no needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
I have a wife and 4 kids. If anything ever happens to me, I want them taken care of. That's why I have life insurance. Ethos. 10 minutes, 100% online. Done.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Most people call leaf filter when their gutters are clogged and they notice one of the many issues that can bring. You can get ahead of costly damage by protecting your home's gutters today.
Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Now it is time for our Soundbite Shuffle. Put your phone down. We're going to scroll for you right now. And today, a district attorney wants to blow up Trump's ballroom, while another Democrat calls for term limits. But first, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon with a new book.
'Twas the night before school, and all through the nation, parents and students awaited with anticipation. The Trump administration has been in office for over a year, and the impact in schools will be quite clear. Sturdy instruction, evidence-based literacy. Gone are the days of grants funding absurdity.
I want to clean up the court so that we can get back to them being like actual jurists. You either get 18 years on the Supreme Court or you hit 75 years old and you're out.
And I'm going to have a paperweight sitting on my desk. You know what that paperweight's going to be? It's going to be a piece of the ballroom after we all blow it up. That's what it's going to be. And an official ceremony, just so we're clear.
You know, the president got involved. He has that right. That's his prerogative. As I told, I never, well, Y'all, his policies are good. I never understood why he got in this race.
Mr. President, Lindsey truly loved you and viewed you as one of his closest friends. I appreciate that bond and appreciate all that you've done for our country. Our victory would not have been possible without you, and we are truly grateful. South Carolina is truly Trump country.
As you just heard, Republican South Carolina Senator Darlene Graham defeated Republican South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman by 5 points, by the way, in the special South Carolina Republican Senate primary runoff. That means she moves on to the November 3rd, 2026 general election. There she faces the Democratic candidate, pediatrician Annie Andrews. Meanwhile, in the last frontier, which is Alaska's state nickname, there's officially not one, but two Dan Sullivans on the ballot. In Alaska's Senate general election on November 3rd, yesterday retired teacher Dan J. Sullivan advanced to face off in the November general election against incumbent Republican Alaska Senator Dan S. Sullivan and Democrat former Alaska Congresswoman Mary Peltola. Earlier, I spoke with Republican Texas Senator and author of the new book, Going Further, the incomparable Clarence Thomas, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, nice to talk to you, and congratulations on your new book, Going Further.
Thank you, Greta. Great to be with you.
Senator, it was a very interesting book. I learned a whole lot that I didn't know, because we don't know much about Supreme Court justices because they live a rather cloistered life, and we just know about their confirmation hearings. But the first thing that I wonder is, you clerked in the Supreme Court for Justice Rehnquist, who was the Chief Justice, yet you wrote the book about Justice Thomas. Why?
Well, I think Justice Thomas is one of the most consequential people to have ever lived. He has an extraordinary personal story, and it's a story that I think Americans need to know, that they need to hear. You look at Justice Thomas, he was born into abject poverty in rural Georgia. He faced vicious racism growing up. He had every disadvantage, and he traveled an incredible journey all the way to the utter pinnacle of American law. You know, when he was growing up, he was raised by his grandparents because his mom was not able to care for him. And his grandparents, his grandfather in particular, Myers Anderson was his name. If you want to understand Clarence Thomas, you have to understand Myers Anderson. He was a hard man. He was a disciplinarian. He worked. Clarence and his younger brother worked them hard. In fact, when they came to live with him, they had come from really dire poverty, and Myers Anderson said when they walked in the door, "Boys, the damn vacation is over." And he would get the boys up at 3 and 4 in the morning, and they would deliver fuel oil with them. That was Myers Anderson's business. And they would do it often in the bitter cold of the winter. And he would not let the boys wear gloves because he thought wearing gloves was a sign of weakness, that they needed to be tough, they needed to be strong. And the one exception to hard work, because he would work them every waking moment, was reading. Because Justice Thomas's grandparents, they were illiterate. Neither one of them could read or write. And they wanted their grandsons to have a better life than they did. And so Clarence Thomas, as a little boy, would go to the library and sit there and just read for hours. And he became an excellent student. And at the time, he developed a desire not to be a lawyer, not to be a judge, but to become a priest. And so he went to seminary. He went to seminary for high school. He went to seminary for college. And he found great refuge in the order and discipline of the Catholic Church, of the tradition. He found great peace. But he ultimately became disillusioned with the church. And he became angry at God because he felt the church was not standing up to racial discrimination, was not fighting for civil rights. And so it ended up with him leaving the seminary and leaving the church for many years of his life because he was so disillusioned. And he went off to college at Holy Cross for undergrad and then Yale for law school. And when he was in school, he was a left-wing radical. He was angry. He described himself as an angry young man. He wore camouflage pants and combat boots. He had a poster of Malcolm X on the wall. He took part in a riot in Harvard Square. And his entire time as a student, he was a hard left radical. And so, Greta, what I try to do in this book is three things. One, tell the incredible story of Clarence Thomas's life and overcoming adversity. Two, describe the intellectual journey of going from a hardcore, angry left-wing radical to becoming one of the most important conservative thinkers in the world. And then number three, Justice Thomas wrote an autobiography. It's called My Grandfather's Son. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. But his autobiography ends when he gets confirmed to the Supreme Court. He's now been on the court more than 30 years. He is today the second longest serving Supreme Court justice in American history. And in less than 2 years, he will become the longest serving Supreme Court justice in American history. So what I do in this book is try to explain 30 years of his jurisprudence, which is some of the most consequential jurisprudence of any Supreme Court justice. And Greta, I try to do it in a way that is understandable and interesting and fun. You don't have to be a lawyer to read this book. You don't have to be a constitutional law expert. I write this book so that a smart high school student can read it and appreciate it and learn, and it's filled with stories that are designed to bring to life who is Clarence Thomas.
You know, it's interesting. There's so many, like you mentioned the stories, a lot of vignettes in it that are, particularly that I noticed. I mean, one is that when he's at Yale Law School, it was important to him that he not be looked like that he got in by affirmative action, that he got in by merit. That was hugely important to him. And even the story about John Bolton, who former ambassador to the UN, many of us know John Bolton, is that one time you write that Clarence Thomas lost his wallet, he had no more money. And you tell the story.
Yeah, so he was a 1L student at Yale Law School, and he was walking through campus, and he suddenly realized his wallet was gone. He had a hole in his pants, and the wallet had fallen out of the hole. And he described, he said, look, it was a bad thing to be there in the 60s in New Haven, Connecticut as a black man with no driver's license, no student ID, no money. He was utterly broke, so he was deeply dismayed. And he said, well, I guess I'll go to the Lost and Found and see if anyone turned it in. And he was pretty skeptical. He figured whoever found it would keep it. But as it so happened, it was at the Lost and Found, and another law student had found it. And they told him the name of that student, and it was John Bolton. And he didn't know John Bolton, but he went and knocked on his dorm room door. He lived just upstairs from Clarence. And he met John Bolton, and he was this skinny kid with this big bushy mustache. And it was interesting. So John Bolton was a Catholic, the son of a fireman from Maryland, blue-collar background, deeply conservative. Thomas was from rural Georgia, considered himself liberal and radical. They were quite different, but they became good friends, and they actually discovered, and I talk about this as part of Justice Thomas's intellectual journey, much of what I think led Clarence Thomas to become the conservative icon that he is, you can find the roots in what his grandfather taught him. Look, Myers-Anderson did not consider himself a conservative either, but he believed in individualism, and he believed in individual responsibility, and you're in charge of your own success, your own life. So, for example, Clarence Thomas's grandparents lived in poverty their whole life, but they never once took government welfare. And Justice Thomas's grandfather said to him, Clarence, if you take welfare from the government, that gives the government license to come into your house, and tell you how you should live, and they got no damn business telling me how to live, and so you don't take it, so they can't tell you how to live. That individualism, that strength, and also that accountability. He would say all the time, he'd look at other people who were out drinking and carousing and committing crimes and making all sorts of decisions that ruined their lives. And he drove into young Clarence Thomas, you're responsible for your life. You're responsible for not making those mistakes. What was fascinating is when Thomas met John Bolton, he saw many of those same individual principles reflected, even though he considered himself from a very different place in the political spectrum at the time.
He had a very, very tough confirmation hearing, but the interesting thing, I think, back in 1991, despite that, he had 11 Democrats vote for him, and if you fast forward to now in these confirmation, I mean, they're down party lines. And what in the world is happening to your body, to the Senate, people, you have that situation where he was able to get 11 Democrats?
Well, look, it was a different era. He was actually confirmed in a Democrat majority Senate. That sadly would not happen today, and it wouldn't happen not just for a Clarence Thomas. I believe if, God forbid, the Democrats win in November, that President Trump will get 0 new cabinet members confirmed, that he will get very few, if any, sub-cabinet members confirmed, and I think the Democrats will shut down every judicial nomination, which there's no precedent for that. Historically, it's always been the case that when you have a president of one party and a Senate of the other party, that you move forward with nominations. It moderates the nominations, but you move forward with them. I think today's Democrats are so radicalized that if they take the majority, they will just halt judicial confirmations across the board. And look, some of this we cover in the book, because I trace the history of the radicalization of confirmation hearings, and it starts with Robert Bork. And Bork's hearing was bloody. Actually, Ted Kennedy and Joe Biden were 2 of the people leading the charge going after Bork's, and that hearing was so bloody that his name became a verb. To Bork someone is to slander them and smear their character and go after them unfairly. It was the first judicial confirmation hearing to really break that ground. Clarence Thomas was the second, and Clarence Thomas's confirmation was bitter, it was ugly, and I talk in that chapter about how similar it was to Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, and the Democrats followed essentially the same playbook. When Clarence Thomas was being confirmed, Joe Biden was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Justice Thomas talks about how fundamentally dishonest Joe Biden was, how he told him one thing, he said, we're not going to come after you, and every word he said was a lie, and he was instead the point of the spear. And I start the chapter on the confirmation by actually talking about Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. And Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation, we'd made it through the hearing, we were almost done, and at the last minute, the story broke of allegations of sexual assault against Judge Kavanaugh. And the pattern was the same. These allegations, the Democrat senators had them for months. They sat on them. They did nothing. They didn't question Judge Kavanaugh about them. They did absolutely nothing until the hearing was over. And then on the eve of the vote, they leaked them to the press and just smeared him in the press. And that's exactly what they did for Clarence Thomas. Joe Biden had the allegations. He did nothing. In fact, he told people, we're not going to do anything with this. That was a lie. And then he leaked them to the press. Well, what I describe in the chapter about the confirmation is right after the allegations arose against Brett Kavanaugh, all the Senate Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, we met in Mitch McConnell's conference room. We were talking about what to do. And there were several of my colleagues who were saying, we should do nothing. Let's just vote. Let's just move on. We're done. And I strongly disagreed with that. And I said, listen, if you look back to Clarence Thomas's confirmation, the reason he got confirmed is the Senate held supplementary hearings, and the American people listened to Anita Hill. They got to look her in the eye and make a judgment. And then they listened to Clarence Thomas, and they looked him in the eye and made a judgment. And the polling at the time showed that more than 2/3 of Americans believed Clarence Thomas and did not believe the allegations Anita Hill made. And that's why he was confirmed, because 2/3 of the Americans said, that guy's being treated unfairly, and I believe him. And what I said is, I said, listen, I want Brett Kavanaugh to be confirmed. I've known Brett for 30 years. But that's not going to happen unless the American people can look Dr. Blasey Ford in the eye and can look Brett Kavanaugh in the eye and make their own judgment. I also said, listen, none of us, this was right before an election, and the Democrats were eager to have a bunch of old Republican men beating up on an alleged victim of sexual assault. They thought that would help them in the election. And I said, listen, none of us want to vigorously question an alleged victim of sexual assault. And I will say one of my octogenarian colleagues leaned forward and said, I'll do it. We're all like, whoa, 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 easy does it. No, let's not go down that road. But we ended up having the hearing, listening to Dr. Blasey Ford's testimony, the American people did, and then listening to Brett Kavanaugh. And the same thing happened. The reason Brett Kavanaugh got confirmed is the majority of people watching believed him. And that analogy, it really takes you inside both of those bloody battles.
Well, as a former criminal defense lawyer, I hate stale claims because all you can do is say I didn't do it. Both of them were profoundly stale claims. I don't know what happened, but it was impossible. Yep. It would never happen in the courtroom because of the unfairness of a stale claim. All right, before I let you go, tell me if this is correct. And I did a little research on you, and you recently on a podcast in which you said, it is no secret I want to be president. So what do you got to say about that?
What I will say is, you know, the book of Ecclesiastes says there is a time for every season. We're in the season of the midterms, and so my focus politically right now is Election Day in November. We are at real risk of losing both the House and Senate, so I am devoting every waking hour to raising money, to campaigning, to fighting to keep the Senate Republican, to keep the House Republican. If the Democrats take the Congress, they will use it to fight with everything they can to stop President Trump's agenda. And so I'm doing everything I can to stop that. There will be plenty of time in the future to address those questions in the future. What I'll say I'm also doing, since the book, the biography of Clarence Thomas, it debuted yesterday. It is #1 in the country, the top bestseller in the country on Amazon. And so I just want to encourage your viewers, go to Amazon right now, buy the book. You'll enjoy it. It's fun. It's interesting. I wrote this because we're in a time of division. We're in a time of anger. Everyone is yelling at each other. We don't have enough heroes. We don't have enough role models. And this is a book. I wrote this book because Clarence Thomas, I've known him 30 years. I had 9.5 hours of one-on-one exclusive interviews with him to write this book. And I think Clarence Thomas is an American hero. I want to encourage you, buy a book for your kids or for your grandkids, because if you're looking for a role model, someone to emulate, you would be very hard-pressed to choose a better choice than Justice Clarence Thomas. He is a man of principle, a man of courage, and one of the most consequential Americans ever to live.
And as I noted in the beginning, we don't get to know much about our Supreme Court justices because of the nature of the beast. They're cloistered pretty much. But it is a great read. You don't have to be a lawyer to enjoy it. I loved it, loved the little vignettes. And in closing, I'll note I didn't get a no from you to my question about running for president, and we'll talk about that later. I didn't want you to think that I didn't notice that. Anyway, thank you, sir, and good luck with the book. It's a great read.
Thanks, Greta. Greta, I'll say I'm glad there's not a court reporter, because you would probably respond with move to strike non-responsive.
Indeed, I would. Or no, I'd ask. If there were a judge, I'd say I'd direct the witness to answer the. Your Honor, would you direct the witness to answer the question? Anyway, thank you, sir.
Thankfully, there's no judge here.
Indeed. And a thank you to Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. And coming up, the Queen of Country gets honored by the King and Queen. That when the record continues.
All across the nation, people can't stop talking about Carl Higbie and Frontline for the big news they need to know. Watch Carl Higbie, Frontline, tonight at 6 p.m., only on Newsmax.
Today, kids are navigating an always-on world, consuming more information than ever before. Strengthening youth mental health starts with ensuring kids have strong digital and media literacy skills. Teaching students how to think critically about the content they see online helps them navigate digital spaces thoughtfully and intentionally. We need to teach media literacy in every school. Youth mental health is complex, but media literacy empowers educators and parents to keep kids safe.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMulkin Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 5 consecutive years. Set apart by its name alone, Corvette delivers a legacy of American craftsmanship, and a vehicle that sets the bar for performance cars deserves a buying experience that beats it. With hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide, it's no wonder Corvette enthusiasts from across the USA keep coming back to McMulkin Chevrolet.
Did you hear about SHIELD, that test for colon cancer?
No, what?
It's just a blood test.
No.
Exactly.
So I don't have to spend time doing all that other stuff?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
SHIELD is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved SHIELD. From the company trusted in blood tests for cancer for over a decade.
Free yourself from prying eyes. Ask privately with Duck.ai. Visit Duck.ai to chat privately with ChatGPT, Claude, and other AIs for free, all in one place. Duck.ai is from DuckDuckGo, where AI is private and optional.
Ridge is back with our 6th annual sweepstakes. With prizes so epic, we needed a spokesperson to match.
These are pretty nice. You can win a Lamborghini, souped-up trucks, or $100,000 cash.
Enter to win for free at Ridge.
Wait, free?
Yeah.
Save more on your new floor at Lumber Liquidators. Now through September 8th, add unmatched character to your home with long-lasting solid hardwood as low as 79 cents a square foot. Durable, versatile engineered hardwood starting at $169 a square foot. Or stretch every dollar a little farther with waterproof luxury vinyl plank at over 50% off. Don't wait. Score these deals and more before September 8th. Start shopping nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
Nobody tells you when you're young that the ceiling you see isn't real. The constraints you feel aren't forever. And this version of you is not final. Your body doesn't have a limit. It's up to you how far you take it.
That was great, wasn't it? That's a rendition of 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, of course. The royal family posted that video in honor of Dolly Parton. Senior correspondent John Huddy is outside the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. John?
I was going to start singing that, but you don't want to hear me start singing that song, so I'll refrain from that. But we're actually outside the Country Music Hall of Fame. We were outside the Grand Ole Opry earlier today. She was, by the way, I don't know if you know this, some trivia. She was 13 years old when she first performed there in 1959. And do you know who introduced her? The man in black himself, Johnny Cash. And that would really kind of set the table and the trajectory for her career, an incredible career ahead. Now we are outside the Country Music Hall of Fame, where her picture is prominently displayed there. And then on the ground here, Greta, I want to show you where some of the names of the country artists who've been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame are on the ground. Hers is right in the middle, and people have been showing up all day, basically laying flowers. It got rainy a while ago, so that kind of drove the crowds away. But nonetheless, people showing up, leaving notes, leaving flowers as well, you know, paying tribute and respect to the memory and the legacy of Dolly Parton, who left such a massive, lasting influence. Greta, we talked to people all day, including a couple from Kentucky, about the impact that Dolly Parton had on their lives. Here's in part what they told me. Take a listen.
She had contributed so much to humanity and to the country music world and everything. She's going to be sorely missed.
The last thing we visited in the Country Music Hall of Fame was her exhibit, and I have to tell you, it was very emotional to just see her on camera, her interviews up there, and look at her clothing and everything, you know, stage wear that she wore and so forth. I mean, it was kind of getting to me a little bit. It really makes you think. Yeah. She was a beauty. She was a wonderful lady.
Yeah, the little Tennessee gal with the big hair and an absolute artistic powerhouse. Over the course of her career, she won 10 Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Award, 3 Emmys. She wrote more than 3,000 songs. Many of them were hits. Of course, Jolene, which is like a karaoke anthem. You could probably hear it on Broadway around the corner at some of the bars here. 9 to 5, she wrote I Will Always Love You, which was, of course, then was a super stardom song by Whitney Houston in the movie The Bodyguard. You know, the list goes on. She was on the big screen. Of course, the movie 9 to 5, Steel Magnolias, Rhinestone, The Best Little Blank House in Texas. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. The list goes on. But you know, her music even went beyond country and western, Greta. You know, she performed with rock and roll legends like Sting, Elton John, to name a few. Bands like the Grateful Dead performed her work. Jerry Garcia of the Dead said he was his favorite female performing artist. And along with that, her philanthropic work, she, through the Dolly Parton Foundation, donated tens of millions of dollars to various causes, including children's literacy. She did a lot here in Nashville. There's a hotel going up just around the corner here, bearing her name, Dolly Parton's Songteller Hotel. So, you know, she did so much, obviously, for so many people, and that's why her legacy continues. And one just quick note, I talked about this earlier on one of the shows, and I figured I'd bring it up to you. Maybe you'll get a kick out of this. But my mom, Erica Trevor, she was a professional singer back in the 70s. And like Dolly Parton, she was also on The Tonight Show. And yesterday when I was on the flight, about to take off to come here, Greta, I asked my mom, look, as a former professional singer, you have any thoughts about Dolly Parton? And she wrote me this. She sent me a text. She said this. She was a wonderful talent who created a persona that was almost bombastically sexy yet lovable. You don't have to be country to love her music and enjoy her great personality. I always enjoyed watching her perform. We all did, and we will continue to, even after her passing in the many years to come. As far as her passing, her family said that in a statement that she will have a small, intimate funeral service with just close family and close friends. We're waiting for more details about that. Greta, back to you.
She just made everyone feel happy. It was a contagious thing that she could do. Anyway, John Huddy, thank you.
She did.
Coming up, the triple murder trial of Lindsay Clancy is inching towards closing argument. What challenges does the prosecution face, and what about the defense? Their challenges. That when the record continues.
O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, owner of the company that sells an incredible nutritional supplement called Immuno 150. I'm celebrating my 92nd birthday in excellent health and condition because I've been consuming 70 minerals and 80 other nutrients found in Immuno 150. I don't have arthritis, diabetes, heart problems, dementia, or anything else. My blood pressure average is 119/72. My PSA is 0.00. I can still run, jump, and climb a ladder, dance for hours, or do anything else I want to do. Now, if you want to live a ripe old age and still have all of your marbles and muscles, you should try Immuno 150. Regardless of your age, chances are you're not in excellent health because you lack many minerals in your diet. Now, don't hesitate any longer. Try Immuno 150 so you can surprise your doctor the next time you get a physical. Immuno 150 may be the best food supplement in the world. Thank you and God bless.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kid now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
Case after case, unsolved. They don't care about us. I kill them all. Let these crackers know their consequences. Crackers? But you never heard of that? No. Saltine cracker, no flavor, white man. And square. Now this is getting good. What are you? Chocolate, delicious, like a Tootsie Roll, right?
By any means. Rated R, September 4th.
Steve wears Shady Rays. Shady Rays has styles for however you live. And if life takes them out, we've got your back. Because if your Shady Rays are scratched, broken, or lost, we'll replace them. Get Shady Rays. Get replacement protection.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
It is day 21 in the deeply disturbing triple murder trial of Lindsay Clancy. She is the Massachusetts mother who has admitted to strangling her 3 young children back in 2023. She has asserted the insanity defense, claiming the murders happened while she was suffering from postpartum psychosis, and thus she should not be held criminally responsible. Today, her lawyer cross-examined the prosecution's final witness, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Gregory Sathoff. He testified he did not believe Lindsay Clancy when she said that voices told Clancy to kill her 3 young children. Clancy's lawyer challenged that opinion. Speaker pro tem of the South Carolina House of Representatives and lead prosecutor in the Susan Smith case, Tommy Pope, joins me. Nice to see you, Tommy.
Good to see
now
you
we're
again.
at the stage. Yeah, nice to see you again. Everyone's rested, so now we start the voodoo and thinking, what's the jury going to think? And tell me your thoughts, how you would argue this to the jury, prosecution or defense.
Well, I think, obviously I'm going to take the prosecution side. I will tell you, it's much more difficult up there than I think it is down here. With Smith, the defense didn't really have the ammo that they have in this particular case. And in Massachusetts, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did know legal and moral right from legal and moral wrong. So I think it's an uphill battle. I think the prosecution has to bring it back to the beginning of the trial. I often think the experts can be a wash, but in the defense side, they put so much in. I think the prosecution's got to cut through the noise and bring it back to a horrible, horrible choice to take those 3 children's lives. And, the mechanics surrounding it, the fact that she sent her husband away, all the things that shows that she was lucid and not out of her head. And, it's hard for a jury because nobody wants to believe that their wife, their mother, their daughter, their co-worker could do this type of thing.
Well, the prosecution's got to prove to all 12. If the defense gets one person, like let's say a woman who had terrible postpartum depression herself, or somebody knows somebody, if that juror just says, I think she was insane, then that hangs the jury. I mean, that's the end of the game enough to consider retrying it. I think it's a tough case for, as horrible and ugly as it is, I think it's a tough case with the law and these facts for the prosecution.
I agree with you, and her being injured in the courtroom, I think doesn't help, because it goes beyond a suicidal gesture. Whether she meant for that to happen, whether she actually meant to take her life, it's just some jurors may buy into she's been punished enough. But I think like you see outside the courtroom, and sometimes society can reflect what's going on inside the courtroom in the jury's head, and the ones that are have dealt with depression. But there's 2 splits to that, too, because there's the ones that might have battled those things, might have been an exhausted mother, might have been a depressed mother, but still didn't take the lives of their children. I used to get that, back in the day with Smith, people said, I went through many of the same things, but I never would consider harming my child.
Yeah, it's tough, and I can't even imagine. I mean, should she be found guilty, that the insanity defense, the jury is not persuaded that it's a valid insanity defense. Imagine being that judge having to make the decision what's appropriate sentence. And these are all, I mean, nobody, this is one of those cases where nobody wins in this one. This is tough all the way around. Tommy Pope.
I feel nervous. Yeah, good to see you.
Nice to see you, sir. Thank you. Coming up, a glimpse at life inside a war zone. That when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew Pinsky. I've been a physician for 4 decades. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time, and Fatty 15 is one product that actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. A brilliant veterinarian realized that dolphins get disease much like humans. She looked at what predisposed to those problems, isolated the molecule, gave it to the animals, they didn't get the problem. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. Cell health equals physical health. That's why I take Fatty 15.
I wish I wasn't afraid to smile.
I wish I could get implants.
I wish I knew who to trust.
I'm not looking for another quick fix.
I want a smile I know will last.
Clear Choice smiles are made to stand the test of time. They're built by dental implant experts, backed by 20 years of pioneering research and a lifetime warranty on premium arches. Our smiles are built for life. Schedule your free consultation today.
Have you ever thought of getting a walk-in tub for you or someone you love? Now is a great time to take a look at getting a Safe Step walk-in tub.
With Safe Step's standard heated seat and new fast fill faucet, you can enjoy a nice warm bath up to 20% faster. And the convenient touchpad control is right at your fingertips.
Each tub comes standard with a dual hydrotherapy system. The 10 water jets can help increase mobility, relieve pain, boost energy, and improve sleep, while the MicroSoothe advanced air therapy system oxygenates and softens skin.
Safe Step walk-in tubs are built to maximize safety so you can stay in your home and enjoy the comforts of bathing again.
So call now for more information and a free no-obligation consultation.
When you call today, you'll also receive our limited time offer. Don't wait to enjoy safer bathing. Call 1-800-296-0431.
If you find yourself stopping more and more to catch your breath, you could be experiencing what we call temporary oxygen insufficiency. Give yourself a boost with Boost Oxygen. A few deep breaths of Boost Oxygen is all you need to help combat the negative effects of what we call temporary oxygen insufficiency.
Now I live life on my terms. With Boost Oxygen, I am unstoppable.
Get all-natural 5-star respiratory support with Boost Oxygen at these fine retailers.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
Now turning to Ukraine, where the war continues. How are Ukrainians enduring 4.5 years of Vladimir Putin's brutal war? Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder is on the ground in Kyiv, Ukraine, where the war continues to rage. Shelby.
Good evening, Greta. Yeah, July was the deadliest month for civilians in Ukraine since the early days of Russia's war when it started, the full-scale invasion back in 2022. Hundreds of civilians were killed and thousands more injured in July alone as Russia sharply escalated its ballistic missile and drone attacks. And you can, for example, really feel the shift here in Kyiv. I was last here about 3 months ago, and there's a noticeable difference, and that's because Ukraine is critically short of air defense interceptors, leaving the capital exposed. I spoke with residents here about how life has changed. Here's what one gentleman told me.
Well, it's a constant stress, but we keep on living, we keep on working, but it's like under the constant pressure, like huge pressure. Because now the sirens go and the next moment, air strike. So during the night, you have to, wake up and go downstairs, go to the shelter, because because and it's normal for us now. I mean, it sounds really bad, but for Ukrainians, it's a routine now.
Even though it is scary, I mean, it's terrifying.
It is scary. It is really scary. Unconsciously, you are stressed so much that it affects on your health and on everything. You're never gonna understand it as long as you're not here. I mean, you're never gonna, feel it if you're watching it on the news, if you're watching it through the screen. I mean, it's different.
If officials in Washington were watching this, what would you say to them?
Come to Ukraine and see what is happening. I mean, and then you will give us air defense straight away. You will, give us support. You will never stop it, because this is where. No, this is not the beginning of the third World War. It is the Third World War, and it's just a matter of time when it's going to spread all over the world, unless we can stop it here and now.
Say that Russia is preparing a major escalation of ballistic missile attacks across Ukraine, including strikes on critical infrastructure and the center of Kiev. We heard Ukrainian officials say tonight that Russia is going to be targeting shopping malls, gas stations across this country. We saw a massive strike on a shopping mall, a double tap strike last Friday that killed numerous civilians, injured 23 children. And this comes as peace talks remain deadlocked. So as Russia prepares to escalate attacks, civilians here face an even greater threat, with their pleas for additional U.S. air defense remaining unanswered. Greta?
Shelby, there's no way we would know this if you weren't there and reported. So thank you very much. Thank you. Shelby Wilder in Kyiv.
You.
Thanks, Shelby. Coming up, did you know today's a holiday? Well, sort of. That when the record continues.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax. They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
My car insurance bill doubled?
You should try Insurify. In just a few clicks, you can compare rates from dozens of insurance companies. And you could...
I just got the same coverage for half the price.
Hey, that's what I was going to say. Go to Insurify.com and save up to $1,000 a year on your car insurance.
Honey, Mortgage Bunny 6 says we should keep renting.
Mortgage Bunny 6?
Reba says more realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. They track every market so you know when to make your move.
He also says that Bigfoot... Got it.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
Do you believe in miracles? Is this not a miracle? All these homes here are mortgage-free homes.
This amenity center, along with this community, speaks volumes without even saying a word.
It's like a big dining room table in your house. This amenity center is going to bring so many families together all day, every day.
The only way that this happens is out of people's generosity and kindness. Every single bit makes a difference in someone's life.
Go to T2T.org.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
Pain kept slowing me down. Then I tried new KT Menthol pain relief patches. Unlike other patches that only mask pain, KT increases blood flow to help accelerate healing. So don't give up. Tape up. New KT Menthol pain relief patches.
My soothing lavender used to be a calming force around here. Back when people were melting down over workforce planning, I was hot stuff. Budgets burned up, employees burned out, and I was their aromatherapist. Then they got real help with Bamboo HR. Now there are no fires to put out, and my job's extinguished.
Need a better way to infuse calm into your workplace? That's Bambooable. That's Bamboo HR.
Ridge is back with our 6th annual sweepstakes. With prizes so epic, we needed a spokesperson to match.
These are pretty nice. You can win a Lamborghini, souped-up trucks, or $100,000 cash.
Enter to win for free at Ridge.
Wait, free?
Yeah.
Today is National Dog Day, and even the New York City Police Department is celebrating. They are showing off one of the many talents in their K-9 unit.
Hey, Tasso, what sound does a police car make? Hey, Kaido and Gojo, what sound does a police car make?
They're so talented, aren't they? And I want to wish a happy National Dog Day to my dogs, Annie, Charlotte, and Dottie. They are so sweet, but in my house, it's the cats who rule. My cat, Jack, likes to sleep in the dog bed, and dogs don't dare argue. They let him. But for the National Dog Day, Jack the cat did something nice. He let Charlotte lie on the dog bed, but on one condition, Charlotte only got to put half her body on the bed with Jack. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take is next. David, Newsmax.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.